There you go.
And I'm gonna record just as a backup. But yeah, thanks for being here, guys. We're gonna do another Trader Spotlight with Josh, of course, and I'm gonna ask that template of questions, and I hope that you guys are, able to step in with any follow-up questions should they be there. So thanks again for being here, and let's jump into it. Um, Josh, in 5 minutes, could you tell us about your journey that led you to Hybrid Minds and something that you appreciate about the group and something you'd improve?
So going all the way back to what the very first place that I tried to interact with any kind of financial market, I'm self-taught on everything that I've ever done, even in my career, music, technology, all these sorts of things. Um, was brought up in a way where I had to be very resourceful. Don't have higher education. Didn't grow up in a family that was white collar or anything like that. Every time I tried to go into this arena, I just kept getting confused by all the jargon. And my mind for all the words I use is actually very simple. And when things are duplicative, like buy, sell, call, put, you know, long, short, all that stuff just like really twisted my mind into a knot. And I couldn't even get past the basics of what we consider, the typical trading thing. And I tried a couple of times to get into it, and I couldn't. Well, after getting my job at Salesforce, and having some of the financial benefits that come alongside that, I finally decided to invest a little bit of money in some education, and I got hooked up with this company called Online Trading Academy, which was a giant capital waste. I'd actually rather completely have guessed on trading with 5 grand and been wrong and lost it in 30 seconds than what I got out of that. But regardless, it did get me over the hump of that basic rudimentary thing. That introduced me to a SMB trader who, for whatever his heart's intent was complicit in me burning $8,500, not having a clue what I was doing. Um, and I think I say that with a measure of grace and forgiveness of myself. I don't mean any negative thing with that. But it was based around market profile and developing value. And I couldn't follow him, and as a result, I just kind of went my own way and lost a lot of what I think is a lot of money. Not before we sort of parted company, I he accidentally introduced me into Convergent, which I didn't know what to do. I knew that I saw trading as technical. I enjoyed the elements of it that a lot of us do, being right and dissecting information and having skills and sort of maybe intriguing skills. So I kind of kept with it, and then I joined Convergent, and FT was very attractive because of how much he seemed to systematize this stuff that was very vague from the SMB trader. Everything he talked about was vague, and it was all gut feel and intuitive to him, and it worked for him. I saw him do it. uh, I couldn't replicate it. And so FT kind of even said that, that would be people's experience, and I identified with that. And alongside of that, I met Nick along the way, and all this time. So this is actually 3 years ago. Yeah, that's right. It's 3 years ago when I started this journey, and then about a year and a half in, I met Nick through Convergent, and we took up, and Nick knew a lot, and I saw that right away, and he generously offered to help me along my path. Started showing me things that I didn't have any access to, hadn't read before, didn't understand, and we started talking, and that was very cooperative. And then I was going through this cycle of really strong self-doubt and feeling like every time I tried to participate and help others, a philosophy that works for me in the rest of my life, it seemed to be having the opposite of effect in trading. And I selfishly parted from Nick. Think nothing to do with Nick. Nick didn't do anything wrong. I just felt like somehow I've got to go like isolate and figure out what the hell's wrong with me. Um, Turns out there was actually nothing wrong with me. So that led to me a double down investment in everything that FT said and take his advice to the T. And got me to the point where I realized I have no system. I don't actually know what I'm doing. What I have is market features or functions that I can kind of catch on to, but it's not really a system. It's not really setups. And I figured that out by how many times people would say you got to know what your setups are, and I'm going, I don't even know what that means, and nobody can seem to explain it to me. So long short is that through the process of going hyper detailed in my journaling process publicly and the accountability thread, Ziggy, you reached out to me and said, "Do you want to be part of this?" And by the way, when you did that, I was not ready to give up trading, but not willing to do anything that I'd done before. So I was reluctant, I think, to even entertain joining another group because it just seemed like another set of circumstances where I'm going to invest and I'm trying to help others with whatever I know, but I don't end up making any progress, and that was going to be frustrating to me. But I did, and along that path, I also met Michael, who was gracious enough to share with me what he'd learned about Delta, and that started to really connect some dots for me. And I've been here ever since. And I want to bring up one other thing. My first sort of interaction with Hybrid Minds, where I spoke my mind, was I saw, I think it was Ben, it might have been Ben, but it could have been Aaron, but somebody was complaining about taking a stop, and I was just so livid to hear it that I thought, look, dude, that is, in my mind, whatever. I just regurgitated all this my belief systems out there so that I could know who I was talking to know who this community was. Because I didn't want to be part of another community that was basically like Convergent. I'd started my rejection of Convergent as being something that can actually be helpful. So that's kind of how I got here. What do I like about it? I'll tell you, I have never been part of a group of people who I thought were genuinely interested in other people's success, selfless in how they present their experience, and committed. I think the fact that you're all here and listening to me, who doesn't know anything about this stuff, talk about it and invest in me in that way is so freaking encouraging for how difficult trading actually can be, which I think it is a solo climbing sport. Um, I am so attracted to this. I've been looking forward to having this meeting ever since we had the last one. This is a staple of my existence at this point. So, uh, what I would like to improve about it may be a fanciful goal, but the goal is I would like to see more focused collaboration. And I'll give you an example that we've talked about. Well, I'll use the most pressing one. So Jeremy has offered to do workshops on specific things. I would like to see more focused collaboration on the creation of that content, the memorialization of it so that it gets up and it can be reused, communication, research projects, stuff that benefits the community as a whole on an ongoing basis. I think that's going to take time, but that's the one thing I am actively trying to improve about this community.
Great. That's a great answer. It's nice to know a little bit more about your background as well, which I didn't know about. That's great. Thank you. Why don't you tell us about your trading process and what you think is working in your process?
So the process basically works on an intraday time frame. I am trying to crunch a day profile down into probably 15-minute or less movements that revolve around auction theory. So what I care about is are we leaving value or are we crossing value or are we staying in it? As a result, I am looking at the highest time frame I look at, which is the day time frame, to see a price channel, a Wyckoffean price channel idea. And then from there, I am trying to make assessments, deductions about whether or not price will continue or revert as a result of that. So then I look at market profile to collapse that even further to say, okay, where is value starting to assemble? And then I collapse that down even further with price channels on the lower time frames. So it doesn't really matter what time frame I look at, but I actually look at the 30-minute time frame to build my trading price channel that I expect to see for the bias of the day, and then that comes down into the actual minute 1 minute bars. There are two systems of thought or organization that I have around what I'm looking for. One I owe purely to Michael, which is momentum. I'm using EMAs, stacked EMAs of momentum with delta in a specific direction. And then when momentum is not the campaign that's underway, then I'm looking for imbalance trades, which could be long or short term, doesn't really matter, but it's at a location that should be relevant to the price channel and or market profile values, whether that's a developing value or one that's already printed. So like a previous day value area low would be a reference that I would care about, but also developing value on the intraday profile as it's being printed would be something I would care about, and those are all effective in my system. What's working about it is, and this has been increasing and accelerating over the last, I would say, 3 months, is that my ability to process lots of information quickly has always been a strength, but in trading, it's always been a weakness too, a directly inverted weakness on the basis that I couldn't organize it fast enough and still execute, and then also maintain self-control. Where I'm at now is because I've been able to chunk everything down to a point at which I have expectations about what the information means for me, or at least I'm willing to make the bet on what it means to me, then I am more able to effectively act within that context. I there was a time, this is a perfect example of what I used to be afraid of all the time. I would take a trade and just say, well, I need some information and I don't know what it is, because this could just rip against me and I could be wrong immediately. And I could even verbalize that at that time when I was feeling that all the time. My What was happening is my amygdala, I don't know if that's true, I'm begging off of what Nick has said, was just regurgitating a bad memory that I had when I didn't really know what I was doing. And so as that kept repeating itself, I just kept becoming afraid that this will be the time I'll put my hand on the wire and the fence shocks me, and that of course stunted my ability to actually make any kind of decisions. So just to reiterate, being able to chunk all this information down and then formulate, I think, rational expectations about what's going to happen has basically eliminated any um, unpredictable, or any predictable doubt rather. And that systemization, that function of all of that stuff really appeals to me. Um, and my performance shows that it's working, absolutely working.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think I've been able to witness firsthand some of the changes in your process, and I think that's definitely an area that you have strengths in. And before we move on, I'm just wondering if anybody else has anything to touch on that in terms of Josh's process or questions. No?
No, I know Josh's process pretty well, so I understand it well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just okay. Yeah, we can move on. That's fine. The next question I have for you, and thanks for answering, is would you be able to describe one or more of your ideal setups?
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Perfect.
I am still, as I do this, I'm still working out what I think is my best. There's ones that, you know, I still have this intuitive relationship with some of these setups to the point at which I think I know which ones I like the most. But I don't actually know if it's the ones that, why that is. So the jury's out on, for me, on which ones are the best for me. I think of what everything I'm about to show you, my bread and butter, I'm not there yet. There's certain things I see more clearly, and I just need more experience with what I'm doing. Hence why I'm doing what I'm doing. But a typical setup under momentum, and I've divided them that way, is that I've got three setups in momentum. One is a typical continuation, and I think this has examples of it. A second one is a nuanced version of continuation that I would say enhances my timing and lowers my risk. And then the last one is one where there it is likely to continue, but the market is briefly balancing before it continues. And I tried to mark them out on how easy they are to identify versus how difficult they are to execute. Um, so interestingly, I think this is an odd relationship. You know, the typical continuation is very easy to identify. It's not very hard to execute, but the real key factor is that when we start to stack up the P&L, you know, this you get a lot of stops here. You know, likewise, the balance break is one that I think it is not that easy to identify. It is extraordinarily difficult, but when you get it right, you know, the ticks are there. So it's kind of like, that's an interesting relationship. The second half of the trades are um, the reversals or the imbalance trades that I'm calling, you know, essentially not momentum. And I'll walk through a couple of quick examples on what I look for. But the specific thing that I'm saying is that before I even take a trade, every single time before I take a trade, I'm looking at my charts, and then the context tells me what to do. And then I come and look at this chart and I go, okay, well, if it's near the open, then I'm expecting an impulse reversal. So what do I need to see? I need to see pace of bid exhaustion. I need to see a test in developing value. I'd love to see that the imbalance is in alignment with a high time frame bias. That's great. EMA is not set up, meaning I'm not going against momentum in this, which, you know, something that you have to factor. You know, momentum is set up, but I actually want to trade against it. Scary. So those kinds of things. And then I harp this so bad to you guys, you probably don't like me saying it, but it's because it's the code by which I live. So here, this is my timing. My axis says, okay, I want to see in the delta, I want to see a wave delta imbalance. I want to see lowering opposition in the delta, and then I want to say cumulative delta with us, or lowering, or, you know, at maybe even a bias flip, that there's a pole flip in that. Those are things that I'm actually looking for. So what's the trigger? I'm looking for the opposing bar close. I'll point out an example of where this happens. And then, you know, some less than desirable situations. What's the stop? What's my target? And then some of the other factors here. And this, I've been using this, I think, 90 90 or better days, maybe 90 to 120 days, close to that, closing in on that with this. And this has provided so much clarity. So let me just go to this example. If I can find this example or one other, we'll just flip back and forth. Usually this impulse reversal thing happens near the open. So I'm just going to kind of grab it and describe what you're seeing here momentarily. What time is it? 9:30. Okay. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. So it does happen here. Not an easy one. This is not an easy one to trade. For sure it's not. But the way this day sets up for me is this. I am looking at developing value, which you're looking at. These are the Sigma relationships. Ben uses this as well. I got this from my SMB trader. They still trade this way. But the way I'm looking at this day is, come here, pen. There we go. The way I'm looking at this day is that we've got a multi-day composite here, and the auction has left it. It tested up, it left it again. And so I am thinking short. I'm thinking short. So what does that mean? Well, in terms of my plays, I have a couple of things that I can think about. One is momentum set up at the open? And let's just walk back. 9:30. Sorry about that. Flipping around my tools. It's not really set up. It's not really set up. It's below 200. So then this yellow line is the 200 EMA. So definitely that confirms short, but it's not set up. So what that means is that the EMA play is eliminated. I'm not even thinking momentum short. I'm thinking that I have to fade a move in order to get in. I'm expecting a market movement, much like what it does, before I can ever even think about getting into the trade. So in an impulse reversal, in fact, I would have been stopped on this one. Is that I am looking for a test into developing value. I'm looking for a move down, sellers to show up, and then some form of a retest that fails. Now, typically, what I want to see in an impulse reversal is just that it comes up, it drops, it kind of tests up once, and then like this. This longer version of this is actually a little bit more difficult to get aboard. But if you go back to the example, I'm saying, okay, pace of bid exhaustion, test and development value, or test into VWAP, wave delta imbalance, lowering opposition. Okay, so let's just go see if all of that's there. So here's this. Let me change my color. In this test up, this is where that is. What happens? There's an impulse into value, which typically means don't fade, but then immediately it lets off, gone. Then sellers initiate. Then buyers disappear. Yippee, we're about to get short. So what I'm waiting for now is that this down bar, as soon as that hits, click, there's my short right there. That's I've got a lowering opposition in the wave. I don't see the imbalance, it's not there, but I do see an initiation here with no counter initiation on the other side. And if I didn't take it there, I definitely have to take it there because you're seeing the pole flip here. And this is how I read all of that real time, and I am documenting what's happening in the charts as it's going on, so that I can sort of repeat the process and get it down to like a flight check. It's very um, structured, I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, well, that what you've developed in that table, it's very impressive for sure. I think that that chart alone, that table alone, would probably save so many traders some headaches had they been able to just organize their setups into something along those lines. So I think that's great, and that makes a lot of sense. Do you mind if I ask, unless you had something else uh, to talk on? Where would your kind of target be for something like how do your targets get factored into a setup like this right here?
So I didn't really touch on that too much. I learned this from Michael. On an imbalanced setup, you always want to take a little bit off of at 200 if it's not the target itself. But typically, my targets on a trade using developing value have to do with developing value. So I'm a big believer that whatever got you into the trade should get you out of the trade. I don't believe that you can combine systems and just hold trades forever. If you can, I don't know how to do it. It's not for me. Um, so to that end, in this case, if I'm holding VWAP, then the real target for this trade is developing value, +2. Um, that's the air quoting target.
Right.
However, in some cases, there are structural things that that are happening on the day. Now, I'm not showing that kind of chart just yet, but if I bring this over, then I can look at this day and go, I can, and I don't know where this actually plots on the day, but I can say, oh, there's previous low of day there. I'm going to watch delta, and as long as delta is continuing with the movement and price is continuing with the movement, then I'm going to try and see if I can hold for this HVN. I'm going to try and hold for this previous low of day. And I think a lot of that has to do with being very in tune with that product's movement, Like RTY, you know that. You
Yeah.
can't hold. You have to play each leg onto itself. You just cannot hold until it gets to wherever it's actually going to go for the day. But that's typically how I do it.
No,
Do you
that
scale
makes sense.
to, do you scale, Josh, on these trades?
Right. So that brings up a really great question. With imbalanced trades, I can get out as soon as I think it's wrong or I don't like it anymore. So I try not to scale on imbalanced trades at all, but typically I do. It's a habit I'm trying to massage with the the more momentum based stuff. Like this, for instance, this is a imbalanced trade that turns into momentum at the same time. What I would have done, or what I should have done in this situation, is anticipated, because we're below the 200 that EMA would set up. So what I should have anticipated is that if this impulse reversal is correct, that the next trade that I want to add into that should work is the EMA. So I should be trying to take off at a location so that I can add right back in and take more of that. But I am scaling at a, what do I want to say? I'm not trying to get risk off as fast as possible, is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to extend the first target to a place where if I had to cut the whole trade right there, it is an R um, a proper R factor for the trade as an overall. So that's not an awesome answer, Nick, I know, but I know some people are pretty structured with how they scale, and I'm not. What I do is I'd put this trade on here, and then the first exit is right down there. And if it looks like it's failing right there, I'm out, because I'm going leg by leg.
Right.
And
No,
the other thing that I wanted to ask you was those numbers that are printed on there that give you the signal. When do they actually appear? When
They're
does the last chart, like on the right, when does that actually appear?
Yep. So this the well, do you mean these numbers here?
So for example, the 53, you had a delta at the top there of 370, right? And then it moved down. It's in the weight chart, weight
Oh, it's in the
background
white
chart.
chart. Okay.
Yeah, no, the one you have right there, right up at the top,
Here? I'm sorry, I'm getting lost.
right there.
Okay.
So when does that 53 show up, and when do you have to pull the trigger? Like,
Oh,
in other words, as that wave's pushing up, it's probably showing you a total, but you don't know that that's going to be the top bar until the next bar.
that's right. Yeah. So the way, and you're bringing up a great point, which takes time. As brilliant, I think, as the way this M box is organized, you have to get comfortable with how it works within its own system. So the GAN oscillator requires 3 bars in an opposite direction before it prints, so to speak. But these numbers are printing real time. So you're watching it up and down, up and down, up and down. But my execution system only executes on the close of a bar. So in this case, I don't know for sure if I would have taken that one. It's valid for me to have taken it. For sure I should have taken that, and this would have been printed there because it's got 3 bars against it. But I'm not waiting for that either. The only time I would be waiting for this oscillator and that number to be um, printed, and that being the requirement of the trade, is in a situation like this where it has an algorithmic indication, which in this case is it's showing what they call 3 stooges, which is 3 waves of lowering delta. So in that case, I will wait until that prints. And this particular indicator gives me it's orange. This gray line is orange until the software commits it to back to gray, and at that point I will take that trade.
When you said three waves down in delta, where are those? That's the 370, 53, 71?
The 16, the 3, and the negative
Oh,
and 0.
oh, okay. Gotcha.
I've delta's on top and volume is on the bottom, and these are factored, so it's the numbers are actually larger. I think the divisor's 10.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now that makes sense.
great. That's no, that does anybody else have any questions about these ideal setups before we move on? Okay. So Josh, how did you actually get to these setups that you're trading right now? Like, why is it that you think that they work for you?
Uh, it was a lot of work, actually. I wish I had the time, and you guys would be interested for me to show you all the bullshit that I tried. My history in all of this is that I've never really made um, very much money in futures at all. Like, I know people that said, well, my first trade I made $16,000 and then proceeded to lose 250. Um, like that's never happened to me. I've just kind of always failed, and I know now why. But I owe, if I were to try and isolate the key influences here, I think Futures Trader helped me understand that a system is possible and that it needs to be organized and that there's a process to getting to it. However vague you need it to be or precise you need it to be, somewhere in between those two things is the answer for you, and your personality is the most clear indicator of that. I attribute Nick to helping me understand that price movement and structure is a valid way of interpreting information. I attribute Michael for giving me, even though I've been had Delta explained to me so many times by other people, and he's the first person that ever made it make sense to me. So what between those three, I think that's the largest influence I have in looking for what I now call action, location, participation. So I'm contextually looking for what is price doing, where is it doing it, and who's participating. And once I discovered those three things, then it suddenly became easy to dissect and interpret the movement in a way that I could interact with it, I think, consistently. If I haven't lost the plot on the question, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I'm assuming you've shown me some of your like past work and all like your logs and the work that you've done to, actually be able to have setups that you call your own now. So that's been really interesting. Now, on that journey to get to what you have now, like, did you try all types of different, like, did you try micro kind of like scalping and like swing trading? Because right now, right, you're like, it seems like the time frame you're executing on a basically 1 minute bar closes and then looking for kind of intraday levels like the value areas and just impulsive legs to be part of that momentum or imbalance, right? So have you tried like some of the other kind of other areas of trading, other styles of trading too?
I really haven't. For better or for worse, I was unwilling to try anything that I didn't feel like I understood clearly. Now, I say that, and if you knew my experience, you'd probably disagree with my behavior being in alignment with that. But I thought I understood what I was doing, and it just took time and perspective to realize that I didn't. So it was actually a point of frustration for me many, many times when I would listen to people scalp or take risks or just put the trade on, or like you pick however you want to describe that happening. It used to frustrate the piss out of me that I was working so hard to be process driven, and I didn't have very high opinions of people who just seemed to do stuff at random, seeming to be successful, you know. And
Yeah.
that's been a big. I'll be honest with you. If there's one boulder I'm glad to be free of, that's it. I think I understand now what was going on. But yeah, no, I never really tried to diversify in any of that because I couldn't figure out the formula that was predictable. Even scalping, you know how, of course, I'm sure everyone on this call knows how painful it is to have this gut intuition or however you formulate the sentence in your mind that says, I know this is about to do this, but my system doesn't allow me to touch it, so I'm not going to touch it. My system does allow me to take stops though, and I'm going to do three of those today. you know?
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly that. I mean, that feeling of I want to buy here or I want to sell here, and then, the other part of you is like, well, this does not fit into what I've planned to do today or ever, right? And that's definitely really frustrating. So you felt that enough, I'm sure, right? Having not tried scalping or, just a little bit more like even higher of a discretion to the moment.
I was very disciplined, and so this was all the more frustrating to me to get bubblegum advice from even people at Convergent, and they speak in vague terms, and I'm just going, look, I mean, most people hold to the idea that if you can't explain it simply to a child, then you don't understand it. So then how are you being successful? Like that was just a giant contradiction to me. Why is it that people can be successful but they can't explain it in any way at all? That doesn't resonate with me. And I think I understand why now is people don't understand themselves. So it's gonna be really fucking hard for them to describe what they're doing on, because you're asking them to peel back the onion of their mind, and they can't do that.
Yeah, well, especially in trading, where to be honest, there is an element of luck. I don't think anybody can deny that there's an element of luck. So perhaps there's people that you've talked to that had a little more luck than maybe you had too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah,
you would see it on the trader reviews that Convergent did. Sometimes it was just mind numbing to listen to people say the thing. I just freaking covered my eyes and clicked the button and made 300 grand. It was awesome.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
what the fuck?
So we do have one more question, but I was just curious if anybody here has anything that they want to ask or talk about in relation to setups or process from what we kind of talked about so far.
Well, I maybe Josh, I don't know, but the red and the lines you have on your chart. Maybe you could explain them. How do you use them?
Oh, so some of that's developing a little bit. Are you talking about these reference lines, Michael? Or are you just
No,
talking
no, I'm
about?
talking about no, I'm talking about the volume. The green and the red ones on your
Oh, yeah,
chart.
the pace of bid. So
No, not the pace, not the pace. It's
here.
what do you call it? What is it
The
called?
horizontal lines on the actual price chart, or no?
Yeah, it's yeah,
Oh,
it's the auto floor ceiling lines I'm talking
yeah,
about.
the floor and ceiling lines. Okay, so yes, you bring up a really good point. I am largely right now, I'm using them more to exit than I am to enter. What I'm really looking for is I'm using them exactly as they're described, which is resistance and support. So seeing what you're seeing here, that all of this volume went off and buyers couldn't hold it up, and then when we test back up into there, you get this kind of setup. This becomes a nice confirmation of an unwind. There's a couple of ways that you can look at it. There's one of like a measured move of this balance area. There's that. But really, what I'm looking at is seeing the confluence of all of this resistance being here, and we're at the top of this balance area. Plus, my setup says, yeah, I really think that this setup has a lot of potential to see an unwind to the downside. Easy to say, right now as we're looking at it, but that would be one way to help confirm the initiation of a trade. But more often than not, what I'm looking for is if uh, I don't have an example that I can quickly point to. Okay, well, right there you go. So if I'm executing short, so it looks like I might get an EMA set up here somewhere, then that line is very important to me. I am going to monitor closely, if not take size off right there, because I know that the market turned right there. So unless we slice right through it quickly, and I mean like within 1 minute, then yeah, that's what I'm going to expect to see happen, something like that. And I don't want to be in that trade if that starts to happen. I want to be out of that trade and the main reason is not because the trade's wrong, even though that might be my hypothesis, but because I know that there's going to be another opportunity. That I know there'll be another leg, and I will get a chance to read the auction and find another setup and another play that makes sense within how I organize the information. So typically, Michael, you bring up a good point. I am using this as an exit, and especially if you don't make it. And I don't think you did right here. So if I go back to the bottom of this price, yeah. So when you don't make the volume, that's a bad thing. That's like trying for the point of control and missing it by 2 ticks. What always happens? You dump. And I don't know why that happens, but that seems to be what happens.
That makes sense. I do have one more question before we move on, real quick, and that's just basically on ideas like this setup right here. How many attempts are you gonna take, like maximum? Like once you stop out, is that idea invalid on the first one, or how does your kind of attempt slash stop out kind of work for this type of trade?
I haven't gotten to that point yet. In most cases, though, let's see, let me rephrase that. That's not true. I have. In most cases where I see the highest occurrence of retakes is actually with EMAs. So I think I documented that, maybe not here, but as I was building the setups, does it say? No, it doesn't. Yeah, so when I was building the setups, they actually say how many times you can retake it. I think this one, you can retake it one time. But in most cases, the imbalance setups are right the first time, and if they're not right, then it's definitely wrong. Not bias correcting wrong, just not that area.
Yeah.
EMAs, on the other hand, as Michael can attest, and we both recognize. I mean, you can be wrong 4 or 5 times before it'll actually go, which can be frustrating. So we tend to rely a little bit more on confirmation in the pace of bid and the growing delta, which brings up a point that I just want to illustrate. I very much, and I actually got this from Jeremy, although Michael explained it, I don't think I really conceptualized it very well, which is if I am looking to execute in an area, I am always looking to see more buying than selling, or one side more than the other. So if the other side comes in strong, and that's why these charts are on here. So you see 49 down and then 51 up. Well, guess what that means? I'm not doing anything because nobody's in control. They're both working at it. Then sellers come in, and there it is, 73. Buyers are less, and I'm like, well, not a fuck. Drop down there, Sierra, a lot less. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe. And then the sellers immediately evaporate, right? So they're not pressing as hard. Then the buyers push a little bit more. Then the sellers disappear completely. Okay, in this situation, and I'm not saying anything about an execution. I'm just saying, like, generally, my bias right there is flipped for the moment long. Doesn't mean I'm taking a trade long. It just means that in the auction process, based on where we are, and I would again lean on Jeremy's point about the auction inflection points, look at what's happening and where it's happening. Let's just do this. There you go. Okay. So, and I'm going to just take the moment to describe this because it's valuable to me and I think it will be valuable to others. Action, location, participation. This is my formula. If I could spell that correctly, it would be spelled correctly. But you have this large initiation down, a balance area, sellers initiate higher, or buyers initiate higher, sellers try or don't even try, they give up, and then we impulse out of the area. So the action is impulse, rejection, balance, push higher. So what would you be expecting? I mean, just based on that purely, what would you be expecting here? You'd be expecting an impulse out of this micro balance area. And Jeremy always says it in a way. There's agreement and then there's disagreement. So then where is it in the trading day? Then I come back to that. I go, oh, it's a developing value area low. So then if this holds, then what would I expect that to be? It means that we're going to stay in value and we're probably going to cross it. That's the location. What's the participation? Buyers are in control. Okay. So I've fundamentally eliminated like 17 possibilities because, it's kind of like taking a test in my view. You got 4 possibilities and 2 of them are wrong right away. So then it's down to, like, in the context, which 2 are left that actually make sense.
Yeah, that's a really very nice example of sellers starting to gradually lose control and then buyers stepping up and regaining control and showing intent to potentially move the auction back towards VWAP in that situation.
Yep.
So yeah,
So
no,
and this is a what would this be? This is a balance break, imbalance setup for me. So you got momentum long or momentum short that is technically in the area of setting back up. I'll go back. I'll show you just right here. Right there. Right there. It's technically set up, but the context of what's happening, where it's happening, and how the participation is happening is telling me I should be highly suspicious of continuation to the low side.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Great job so far. We do have one more question, and then we can, if there's anything else lingering, we can get those answered. But I'd like to ask you if you could get help with one thing in respect to your trading what would you ask for and why?
I go back and forth on that. The one thing I think I want is to be pushed. I I have a good job. This is not my income. There's no risk to me if I don't succeed, other than just my commitment, falling to the wayside, and my commitment to you guys as a community falling to the wayside. But I think what I want to be is challenged more. I succeed in my life, whether it's I guess I don't have to explain why it is. Doesn't really matter. Um, I very much relate to Michael Jordan's notion of being told he can't, or making up stories in his head about somebody said something nasty about his wife, and so he's going to make him pay. And like, just I really gravitate to that warrior mentality. And I think what would benefit me is if somebody was willing to push me.
I like that. No, that and you know, and it comes to mind for me when you say that, and I don't know that I know exactly how to do this right now, but when I think about is just really like how can we push your strengths? Because I can see strengths. I know others here can see strengths, and you're already doing well in a lot of those areas. And I'm just trying to think like, how can we push you to even kick that up a notch? Because if you're doing something really well, what if you did it even better? And how can we help push you? Like it's something to think about. Is how can we help you do that? How can we push you? So that's definitely something to think about.
That's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any more kind of thoughts around our talk today, or Josh in general? Anything? Just a few minutes early, but yeah, I mean, I can't really think of anything else. You've been able to really answer the questions really clearly, and and it helps that I do. You've been sharing a lot about what you've done anyway, so I already have like a pretty good idea around a lot of your process and your trading. But this has been definitely helpful to learn even more and understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to one thing, and I don't know if it's because why the motivation is what it is, but I think the thing I'll throw out there, it's been my experience that a lot of times people don't challenge me, because they think I've figured it out, or I've got it all together, or I'm confident, or some mix up of all of that. And I don't personally subscribe to that notion. Like, I would challenge I do. You see me do it. I challenge anybody, because I don't think authority comes from um, well, I mean, I don't think authority on a technical skill is a monolith. I mean, I think even Michael Jordan has things to learn. I think he can learn from other people about things. It doesn't mean it's going to materially make him better, but everybody should be open to be challenged, because no authority uh, rests in just being that. It rests in being able to withstand the challenge, and overcome it. So, in my view, that's the one thing that I really would like to see more of us be comfortable with in our own way. Challenge. Challenge. We grow when we challenge each other. We don't grow by going, that's cool, I like that, moving on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And that, that because it's easy to have happen, I think, in trading. Like I found, whether it was more than a year ago before I was anything involved with hybrid, it's easy to just kind of say, "Oh, well, that sucks. Come back tomorrow. We'll be trading. So, come back tomorrow." And in a way, it's kind of true because it's like, don't stress about today because you are still here tomorrow. But at the same time, you're kind of leaving out a lot of that. Like, there might be an opportunity to get to push someone in there. Like, hey, like what's right? Like that's a good time to have a push
Yeah.
sometimes. And I think it's good not to just be like, okay, well, come back tomorrow. We'll see what happens, right? That's a good time to push.
Sorry, guys.
You're fine.
You're all right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's. I think it's the community is of us getting to know each other and being comfortable that the way Jeremy's going to push is not going to be the way I'm going to push, and the way you're going to push is not going to be the way Nick's going to push. But being comfortable that we're here by common agreement to learn and to push, and creating that friction is, of course, it's uncomfortable. I think sometimes people, I've got friends that think that I say whatever I think. You just say whatever comes to your mind. I'm like, Jesus, dude, no. No, I don't. If I did, we probably wouldn't be friends. I mean, give me a break. But I do say things clearly, and I think there's an old truth to that, which is people act the way they want to be treated in a lot of ways. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not.
yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, that's been a great session, and I hope everybody was able to take something in and learn a little bit more about you. And it's, I really appreciate all your answers here so far today.